The numbers are staggering. More than 26 million Americans have filed for unemployment insurance benefits as of this week. And the latest update from Lansing. Just this morning, we're hearing commercial and residential construction will resume on May 7th. We'll take a look at how current restrictions are impacting new developments across our state. Some say our governor is protecting citizens by forcing businesses to stay shuttered. Others, though, say her stay-at-home extensions are overreaching and will tank our state's economy. We'll talk about that with our panel of experts as we speak to Matthew Lester of Princeton Enterprises and Todd Sachse of Sachse Construction. Later, we'll have expert analysis and insights from our panelists Cary Belovicz of Greystone Bell, Saab Grewal of Singh, and John Woods of DTN Management. We're obviously leveraging Zoom technology this morning and would like to welcome you into the conversation. So please, if you have a question, insert it into the chat box and I'll do my very best to incorporate them. It's Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. I'm Derek Dickow. Welcome to Impact. Before we begin, for those of you that have been impacted by COVID-19, either by losing a family, a friend, or colleague, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We've partnered with the Children's Foundation COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund and are doing our best to help raise awareness and some proceeds to help frontline and essential workers. I'm pleased to report that as of this week, we've raised more than $1,000 with the generosity of our sponsors and people like you that have chosen to participate. If you'd like to help us out, please visit the link at our landing page and do what you can. All right. There was concern early on for many owners of multifamily properties. What exactly would their rent rolls look like in a global pandemic? Early reports indicate more than 85% of tenants paid their rent in April. And with Governor Whitmer extending temporary relief from evictions through May 15th, what does that mean to investors and owners of apartments? How long can landlords hang in if their tenants are forced to shelter in place? Our first guest this morning is Chief Executive Officer of Bloomfield Hills-based Princeton Enterprises. Let's welcome Matthew Lester. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Derek. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here.
Good to be with you.
Your company has acquired more than 150 properties with an aggregate value north of $1 billion and more than 23,000 apartment units. Matt, can you give us a snapshot of where we're at today with the multifamily industry?
Happy to, Derek. But first, let me join you in extending well wishes to everybody on the call and saying that, like everybody, we're praying that everybody stays safe and that we get through this together. Where are we? I mean, in one word, we are in crises. We are in a crisis that is changing day by day. But that doesn't mean that you cannot be successful, that you cannot come out of this stronger, perhaps even, provided that you have a plan and that you're prepared to shift, like a lot of us did, and pretty much go into a warlike mode. Because let's remember, everything that we knew in January, which was evidenced by perhaps as strong of an apartment market as we've seen in decades, everything has changed. So whether it be occupancies, whether it be collections, whether it be length of stay, whether it be employee strategies, whether it be government interaction, virtually everything that we knew 3-4 months ago has changed. As a matter of fact, one of the few things that seems somewhat of a constant has been the lending relationships that apartment owners have. I'm sure I'm not the only person on this call who has closed a loan or two in the last couple weeks. And so, frankly, my hat's off to the lending community who has been very stable and strong through this. But even in the lending environments with things like the eviction moratoriums that Fannie and Freddie have put in place for 120 days, even there's some changes. But what you said is correct. Most apartment owners experienced less pain in April than we projected. And that's obviously a good thing. The big question now is, what about May? And that's what I suspect most of the people on this call are thinking about. We're included in that. We, like the Samuel Beckett play, Waiting for Godot, we are waiting for May to see how that happens, how that turns out.
Matt, let's talk about the different sectors of multifamily, and what is your estimation of which are performing better, whether it's low-income housing, market rate, or luxury apartments? Do you get a sense for which one is performing better than the others?
I have a sense of performance differences. There was a couple questions suggested here. One was, what areas are doing well and why, and which sector within the multifamily is best positioned to recover. And I would answer both of those questions the same way. I don't think it's a matter of sectors. I don't think it's a matter of which area is performing better than others or is better positioned for a recovery. I think it's far more about the who. It is which organization, which property management company, which owner, which business entity is best positioned to handle the problems that we are confronted. And I think the answer to that question lies in those companies and those owners who have a sound strategy. And I'll share with you some of the 10,000 feet concepts of a strategy that I think is working for us and I think is working for many others. And it starts with the notion of being open and honest with your investors, with your lenders, with your employees, with your residents. This is a time when it's perfectly okay. There's almost never a time, but this is certainly a time when it's perfectly okay to say, I don't know. That's always a good answer, but never a better answer in these particularly uncertain times. I think that this is a time, Princeton is a company that likes to go on offense. We play offense a lot. We're a growing company. We'd like to continue to grow. It's even conceivable that on the other side of this crisis is opportunity. But this is a time to demonstrate leadership by putting other people first, whether that be your employees, whether that be residents. I don't think it's the time necessarily to go on offense. And I would say the other key component to strategies that are working is communication, to keep people informed, both for the purpose of keeping them informed, but also to demonstrate that you care. It's critical in terms of employee morale, and it's critical that people have access to information and that it be a two-way street. So I would say that those are the top level things that delineate a strategy that will make the difference between which areas or which sectors and ultimately who and what organizations recover strongest and fastest.
I'd like to ask a little bit more about the communication that you have with your team and talk about a little bit of your leadership strategy and how you've demonstrated leadership to them during this pandemic. What sort of top-down information and communication do you have with your team? Are you leveraging technology? Are you using Zoom? Are you sending out emails? Are you calling your people? What kind of confidence are you instilling at your team during the pandemic?
So the answer is all of the above. It's, the communication is part of a strategy that we are deploying. It's an important part. We've had global Zooms that have included virtually all of our employees. I think there are daily emails. It's also departmental centric in terms of whether it's the marketing department or the legal department or operations. Everybody is trying to be precise and accurate in terms of their level of communication without overburdening people. If it's okay with you, Derek, I mean, I speak. There's 300 plus people on this call, or maybe even more. I like to speak to the young owners that are out there and,
Please do.
And share what our strategy looks like at a lower level. We talked about 10,000 feet because communication is an important part of it. But really, we've got what I call a six-prong strategy that we have deployed. And if it's useful to people, I hope that it is. Take what's useful and discard what isn't. The first thing is austerity. If it was prudent for any operator or any business person, even outside multifamily, obviously, the day that we realized that this was a crisis, to become austere. And in the case of the apartment owners, that meant a number of things. It meant putting off non-essential capital improvement projects. It might have meant laying off employees. Austerity, I would include in that, perhaps suspending or reducing distributions. And then there are other strategies if the crisis goes on and on underneath austerity. We haven't had to do this yet, but think about it. We had zero payables in February. Virtually everybody did in the industry. Mm-hmm. There is such a thing as slow pay or working with vendors or things like that. We hope we don't have to get to that strategy. So strategy one is austerity. The second strategy is we created an army. You have to treat your employees a little bit different in this pandemic, and there are a number of different strategies that you can deploy. One of them obviously is communication. Another one is to protect vulnerable employees. We laid off about 150 employees. But think about that. In our case, out of the 150, 100 of them wanted to be laid off. If you wanted to be laid off, this is a voluntary business. We're not exactly on the front lines with people in the emergency rooms, but you talk about people cleaning hallways, and you talk about going into apartments to do work orders. They are putting themselves potentially at hazard, and you need to protect them. To the extent that people were either had a pre-existing condition or otherwise felt vulnerable, that was part of the Army, making the Army a volunteer Army. We did other things as well, like implementing hero pay for every single employee in our company who continued to work. That meant increasing their hourly wage and increasing a PTO formula. We also shortened hours and shortened work weeks to avoid burnout. So the second prong would be to create an army. The third is to fight for revenue. Everything that we just talked about in terms of people going into apartments and creating this army to take care of residents, cleaning hallways, all of that goes to the notion of revenue enhancement. Why? Because it puts people in a position, your residents in a position where hopefully they value the roof over their head. And I think that's the most important thing in terms of revenue enhancement. Beyond that, obviously you could run specials and discounts. We did. Maybe we think May is going to be okay because of the percentage of renters who have already paid May rent. Maybe not, because they simply took advantage of specials that we were running. There's also collection techniques that enhance revenue, whether that be payment plans or referring residents to agencies that can assist them. So prong number 3, fighting for revenue. Number 4, I would put lender strategies. And that, what we did is we've been communicative with our lenders throughout to demonstrate that we are good stewards in 2 regards. One is honoring the contractual obligations that we have made with our lenders, and 2 is to protect their collateral. If you think about a lender's vantage point, that's where they're coming from. They want their contracts honored, and they want their collateral protected. And the lenders, as I said, have been great. But I would caution people this is not the time for workouts. And so that is not part of our strategy. And if it were necessary, and if there are people on this call where it's necessary, and certainly we have friends in the retail and office and other businesses where that has been imperative, but that is at this point a strategy of last resort. We also, prong number 5, we put new diagnostic tools in place, and those diagnostic tools are designed to measure performance and to lengthen the runway. You talked about a percentage of rent collected, and that has been the measure that most people have used in talking about May. I've talked to dozens and dozens of owners, and we talk about we collected 90, 92, 95, 97, whatever it is, percentage of rent. What does that really mean? To us, it's not the proper measure in terms of a diagnostic tool, and the reason is this. If you say that you collected 100% of your April rent, you collected 100% of your April rent, but you lost 50% of your occupancy, and obviously I'm exaggerating that to make the point. You lost 50% of your occupancy in March. What does that say about your rent collections? They're not particularly good. So I don't even know if we have a slide I've shared. You talked about communication. I showed this with my staff. If we can put it up, can you see this, Derek? Let's see if it put slide 2.
Not yet.
Slide 2. Hang on one second. Slide 2.
Sure. Yeah, we see it.
You see that?
Yep.
So if you take a look at this, slide, this is a diagnostic tool for us, and I called it. I changed it a little bit for this discussion. Apartment owners thermometer. So you've got the black numbers: 20 million, 10 million, 5 million, 5 million are January. Okay, and you take an aggregated revenue number of $20 million. You have aggregated expenses of $10 million, just using a 50% ratio. Aggregated debt service of $5 million puts you in a position where you've got $5 million in cash flow. If you look at the red numbers and the green number, this is the world that we're living in. And you'll see the star that I've got there. The key is cash, and the key is cash flow, not percentages. So under a COVID-19 normal, maybe that $20 million goes down to $17 million because we know that there are going to be some residents who are going to be delinquent, and as long as there is an eviction moratorium, that delinquency is likely to grow. But if you can fight for the $20 million and get close, that's what, about 85% collections. If you can maintain that through May, perhaps June, July, you should be on the next red line based on austerity. You should be able to reduce expenses, okay? And if you can reduce expenses by the exact number or better or close to the number that you lost in revenue, your debt service isn't going to change, okay? This isn't workout time, so debt service stays the same, but your cash flow can actually stay the same. And I put it in green because it's not only the same, it's actually better, because you're able to suspend distributions. I don't know a single investor, and I deal with hundreds of them, who would argue with an apartment operator who says, you know what, we're not making first quarter and maybe even second quarter distributions. We're going to strengthen our balance sheet. We're going to fight. We don't know how long this problem is going to persist. So you could actually be in a position, never mind percentage of collections, but from a cash and cash flow standpoint, of fighting based on an apartment owner's thermometer, where you have put yourself in the best position to come out of this in a positive way. The last prong is government assistance. We applied for and got an SBA loan. But the message that I would communicate to people from my own vantage point about government assistance as a prong, as a strategy, is we are in a self-help environment. Okay, this is a time to deal with self-reliance, and maybe there are things that you can avail yourself in terms of government or other forms of assistance, but rely on yourself, trust your instincts, try to move the needle day by day. That's the best thing that you can do. You can get overwhelmed very easily when you start to think of this in terms of weeks or months or things like that. So I apologize for the long answer and rant. I hope that's helpful to somebody out there.
No, thank you so much, Matt. That's some very high-level advice from someone as seasoned as a leader as you are. We appreciate you being here. You're going to join us for the second half on the panel. We appreciate you opening this up, and we'll be right back on Impact.
Hi, I'm Larry Burns, President and CEO of the Children's Foundation. In these unique and challenging times of the ongoing coronavirus, our mission to improve the health and wellness of children and families has become even more important. To keep communities safe and healthy, we have established a COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund, allowing us to offer immediate support to community organizations who are now providing food, learning kits for homeschooling, virtual mental health services, and more. With your help, we can reach more children and more families. I invite you to consider making a gift today. It will directly impact some of the most vulnerable communities in need. And to learn more about the work supported by the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund, or to donate, please visit www.chfund.org. yourchildrensfoundation.org. Thank you for your continued support. We are in this together. Onward.
Our next guest is Chief Executive Officer of Sachse Construction, which has developed millions of square feet in multifamily across the country, and located in Detroit with over 1,000 multifamily units. Locally, you might be familiar with some of their projects, the Albert, the Scott at Brush Park, and the Hamilton, to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Todd Sachse to Impact. Todd, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you fine. Todd, you went from 28 construction projects to literally 0 within 5 days. What was your initial reaction as the leader of your company on March 13th? And how are you preparing, and how did you prepare for the global pandemic?
So again, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining, and hopefully we can be helpful and we can learn from each other. I'm a big believer that high tide raises all ships, and one thing that's unique about our community, the real estate development community, is that we're definitely collaborative and cooperative. So hopefully this helps everybody and we can get through this thing together. But in direct answer to your question, I've always said, when times are good, you have to prepare for when times are bad. When times are bad, you have to prepare for when times are good. So for the last 10 years, many of us have been fortunate that business has been good. So we've been fortunate to build a strong organization with a strong balance sheet so that we can get through these times. But when that moment happened, even preparing for down times, did we ever prepare to have zero revenue, to go from X to 0 literally in 5 days? No one could ever prepare for that. But financially, we were fine and we got through that. And unfortunately, we had to do what many other companies did. To give you the short version, when everything was shut down, we paid all of our team members for 2 weeks in full. And then we went through about actually 6 work days in total where we had to furlough virtually everybody in the company to some degree, whether they were getting paid 25% of their pay or 50% of their pay. So everybody, and some people got 0 for 6 days. We then, after that, on April 15th, we brought everybody in our company back to full time at 90% of their pay. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And we've been living in that world, and people are working remotely. So that's kind of how we've been handling it from purely a financial standpoint. And from a communication standpoint, we've been communicating obsessively, kind of what Matt was saying. We have twice a week, we have all company Zoom meetings. So we have 160 team members on it. And we refer to it as a fireside chat, or update everybody to what's going on literally day by day, completely transparent what's happening with our projects, what our plan is, our short-term plan, our medium-term plan, and our long-term plan. And we make it very clear that those are all very independent of each other. The short-term plan is what are we literally doing day by day. The medium-term plan is what are we doing as we start ramping up construction again. And long-term plan is how our company is going to survive and thrive through this, and all the things that we're going to be doing now to prepare for the tail of COVID and how that's going to affect our industry, and both locally and nationally.
Let's talk about locally here. Just yesterday, Mayor Duggan said that the outbreak in Detroit is strongly on the decline. I know you two speak to each other regularly. Your office is headquartered in the city. You've been a big advocate of projects. You've developed a lot of projects in the city as well. How has COVID-19 slowed the renaissance and the recovery in the city of Detroit? And how do you see the city transitioning forward once construction ramps up again on May 7th?
So a lot there. So first of all, I think Detroit is unique relative to the rest of the country and other major cities on a couple fronts, but I'll just kind of highlight 2 of them. One is, yes, we are probably more fragile than virtually every other major city in the country. A lot of things that have been going on. Obviously, we all know what's happening in Detroit over the last 8 to 10 years, but we're still very fragile. We got a long way to go. So something like this is much more difficult for our city to recover from. We were already in a very difficult economic position and a lot of other things that were going on. So that's the negative side of it. A couple things on the positive side. We weren't overbuilt. So yes, there's been a lot, but relative to other cities, we were a fraction of what happened to other cities as far as building. The other thing I think is very unique about Detroit, which I mentioned earlier, and that is the fact that we have a very, very collaborative team of developers, investors, landlords in this city. I chair the Detroit Developer Roundtable, of which there's over 50 members, and that's a group of people that are very collaborative, and we're all trying to work together. We're also working very closely with the city council, the mayor's office, and all the other agencies around, and all the other support groups. So unlike other cities, we are so together and all that. So we believe that though we're very fragile, when we do come out of this, because of that tight-knit group and that we're working together, we have a shot of getting this back on a positive foot. Although it's going to be very challenging, don't get me wrong. Many urban areas are going to, because how quickly are people going to be running to a downtown, close density, dense environment, whether it be in the office or on the streets or in the restaurants. That's going to be a national issue, in Detroit in particular too. So we're going to have that same battle that everybody else does. But I think on the positive side, because of the collaboration of companies and leaders in our community, we got a shot at it.
Let me go in another direction here. The construction workforce has used personal protective equipment for years, decades. I mean, you can maybe go back hundreds of years. I walk past a construction site. It's usually fenced off. People are wearing hard hats, gloves, all kinds of equipment. So it's not public facing by any means. I mean, what advice would you give the governor? I mean, May 7th, it seems close, but don't you think we could just start working today? I mean, why the delay?
Well, you said it very well, Derek. It's like you and I were talking the other day. If 3 months ago I went to the average person, you included, who was a very bright, intelligent, worldly guy, and said, "What's PPE?" You would have said, "Well, those are 2 letters of the alphabet. I have no idea what it is." But everybody in the construction world over the last 100 years, you say, "What's PPE?" They know exactly what it is. They know it's personal protective equipment. Their hard hat, their safety glasses, their vests, their gloves, their masks that they wear, whether they're sanding or painting or grinding or so on and so forth. It's all been part of their life. So for construction to then add, call it another layer or another guideline for PPE is not a big deal. That's why, quite frankly, Michigan it's one of the last states in the country to come back with construction. Only 4 states in the whole country shut down construction. And of the 4, Michigan was the most restrictive of those 4. So on a national basis, we were the most restrictive in construction than any other state in the country. We work in all major cities, all states throughout U.S. and Canada. Half of our projects are outside the state of Michigan, and some of them were able to keep going. Some of them were able to get going several weeks ago, but Michigan's been by far the most restrictive and the most impactful. And just to kind of pile on to that, which is also unfortunate, as many of you know who are owners and developers and builders, is that construction costs in Michigan is significantly higher than it is in many parts of the country. And a lot of it has to do with a couple different areas, but one of it is the lack of skilled trades, that we have such a low number of skilled trades relative to the need. The operative word is skilled, is we lost so many of our skilled tradesmen and women during the last recession that they've either left the industry or left the state. And the fact that I was very worried, who knows whether it happened or not, we don't know. When other states were open for construction, was this another round that we were going to lose more skilled tradespeople? So we won't know that for another 30 to 60 or 90 days as we get back to work. And are we going to find out that our various trade partners said they lost 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 30 people because they went to go work on a project in Ohio or in Indiana or in Pennsylvania or something like that? We don't know. I've not specifically heard that, but that was something that we were very worried about. We cannot afford to lose more skilled trades out of this state. We need to attract and retain more.
And Sachse Construction's really been a leader investing in educating those and recruiting apprentices and with the programs that you guys have had in place. So kudos to you and your team in the city of Detroit for advancing those initiatives. I got a question here from Andy Wakefield. Sort of you alluded to it earlier, but any thoughts on new construction, new projects? I mean, what's it look like for you on May 7th? How are you ramping things back up? Is it, you turn the lights back on all 28 projects, or give us a sense of how you move forward on May 7th?
So great question. I was talking to people earlier, and I thought you met many people on this call probably feel the same way. I'm crazy busy every day from 7:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night, but all I've been really doing is dealing with this COVID crisis. And a lot of it's been preparing for when we reopen, putting plans in place. We've been going to our job sites and actually off station and getting that all ready. Obviously, procuring all of our necessary PPE, writing procedures. We've done video training and set up all sorts of video training protocols for our team members and saving them on our website and on our internal intranet program. So we've been doing a lot of stuff in preparation of that. And to answer your question is, turning the light switch on? The short answer is yes and no. Yes, that's what's going to happen, but it's going to take time to ramp up. So for example, if we lost 2 months of time due to the shutdown, it'll take 3 to 4 months to make that up, because you're not going to be able to go put 200 people on a project day one. There's going to be a ramp up to getting your procedures done, up and running. There's going to be the distancing. You're going to have less people than you otherwise would. There's going to be certain things you're going to have to stagger and not do concurrently that you were doing before. So there's going to be a significant delay. And how that all plays out from a cost standpoint, it's still very unknown. Is how are we going to deal with our clients then, this additional cost and delays associated with that? Nobody really knows. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And like I know us and all of our other people in our industry are going to be fair, but it's going to really affect everybody on the projects that are ongoing right now. We anticipate that all of our projects that have already started we will go on and we will complete them. We've been talking to all of our trade partners. Virtually every single one of them said they are prepared. They have their plans in place. So we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to get going right away, but it'll be a ramp up ultimately. And then we have many projects that are scheduled to start, shortly after this, and getting ramped up for those and trying to plan what are those going to look like. If those were going to be a 12-month schedule, is that still going to be able to be done in 12 months? Does that now become a 14 or 16-month schedule? And what's the impact of that? We still really don't know how that's going to be impacted. But soon enough, we're going to learn. I believe that over time, over the next 2, 3, 4 months, we will be able to get to normal productivity. But I think the next short term is going to be a little bit more tough.
I've got one final question for this segment. It's a question that comes from Glenn Turek. In terms of asking residents within your communities, do you reach out to them in advance? Do you ask them if they're in the healthcare space? I mean, if you have to make some emergency maintenance issues, I mean, how do you go about maintaining the health and safety of your residents and your workforce with those residents of yours that are in healthcare?
Right. So like everything else with our team members, everything is voluntary. So for example, whether you want to come back to the work of the office or not, that'll be your choice. We will make it safe for you. If you've still got kids at home because you don't have daycare, because schools are out and you got to work there, then we will accommodate you. You're in the healthcare business or your spouse is and you're exposed and you don't want to get somebody else exposed. We will really do whatever is necessary to assist and support you, whether you're a team member, whether you're a resident in one of our properties. We will work with whatever your needs are and accommodate your needs. It's really what it comes down to dictate everyone's behavior and tell them what they can and cannot do or should not do. We don't believe this is the time to do that. Everybody has different vantage points or different levels of tolerance or risk or different comfort levels. And we just believe as an organization or a provider of a service that we need to do what they want and adjust and be nimble to accommodate whatever their needs are. And then eventually it'll all come together. Eventually over time, there'll be, protocols that people are comfortable with, and I believe things will get back to normal. And I don't believe there's going to be a new normal, as some people say. I think there'll be a short-term new normal, but I don't think long-term there's going to be a new normal. I really believe that we will get back to pretty darn close. It'll be unrecognizable to what it was before COVID in many of our industries, if not all.
We appreciate your insight, Todd. Stay around and join us for the panel, which we'll have in just a moment. We'll be back and we'll meet our expert panel in just a minute.
Thank you.
As AT&T's #1 partner, MMS prides itself on delivering a world-class experience to our clients and our communities to keep them connected where they live, work, and play. During these challenging times, we are here to serve you. We have many options to keep you connected to your loved ones by offering non-contact transactions and curbside service. Also, because we care about our healthcare professionals, we are offering 3 months of free service to doctors and nurses. Visit mmsmobile.com/stores to find an open location near you and call ahead to set up a curbside appointment.
Welcome back for our expert panel. Please allow me to introduce the Executive Managing Director of Greystone Bell Real Estate Advisors, with more than 25 years of experience in the real estate industry as an advisory role, bringing experience in finance, development, and management of multifamily assets. Let's welcome Cary Belovicz. Next, we'll welcome Saab Grewal. And candidly, I don't have a title because there isn't a thing he doesn't do for the family. It's Singh. They're based in West Bloomfield, headquartered there. They're one of the most diverse portfolios in this region, with more than 5,000 multifamily apartments, senior living communities, single-family homes, subdivisions, commercial real estate, and golf courses. Let's welcome Saab Grewal to the discussion. And for our final introduction, he's the President and Chief Investment Officer of Lansing-based family office DTN Management Company, with more than 100 properties valued at more than $1 billion, and one of the largest privately held portfolios of student housing within the state of Michigan, over 8,000 units in Michigan and Florida. Let's welcome John Woods as well. And we're honored to have back Todd Sachse and Matt Lesser to join our 5-member panel. I'm still taking questions here. I'll do my best to incorporate them all. But Cary, let me start with you this morning. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges in getting deals done, and how are you overcoming them during the pandemic?
Right now, our biggest issue is showing a property. We've got several listings that we're out to market on. We're still seeing a decent amount of traction and activity in the marketplace. And guys want to come out and see properties, and we're stuck right now. So we're looking at putting together Zoom meetings for that, as well as we've already been using technology, drone videos, and doing virtual tours of properties. Also physical inspections. So we've got a couple of deals under contract or going under contract that we're working through with the lenders and the investors to get on site. Candidly, tenants aren't going to want us to go into their units, so we're trying to figure out a procedure for dealing with that. But overall, we're seeing deals still moving. A couple of clients have hit the pause button, but we're still seeing things moving forward. We actually closed 2 deals in April, 105 units in Saginaw, and a 48-unit deal called Colonial Crest in Sturgis. So, I mean, we're still moving stuff forward. I'm telling our team, I went through the 2009 cycle. This is the time where you really can stay in front of your clients, provide them true value as a universal multi-housing advisor. And then what's nice about what we offer, 4 years ago, we did our joint venture with Greystone. So coming in as an apartment broker / a universal advisor. So we are able to come in and provide lending quotes, as well as looking at dispositions and overall consulting for clients.
What asset classes and locations are feeling the effects the most of COVID-19, and which are best to which are poised best to weather the storm? I asked Matt that question earlier. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Cary.
My thought is Class A is probably going to do the best throughout this, just because typically a tenant in a Class A asset is able to work from home. They have a financial cushion. We're actually selling a property right now in Brighton, a Class A asset, and they have not had anybody come to them for any kind of payment plan. So I think overall Class A is going to do well. My biggest concern is going to be Class C assets, and not just Class C. It's going to be Class C where you've got tenants that are affected by this that aren't able to go to work. So that might be the bigger issue. So I think overall A is going to do great. Workforce housing, B and C workforce housing might have a little bit of a hiccup. But overall, I think we'll see Class A do well. Class B will still be strong in great locations. And then maybe Class C might be the lagger behind it.
John, let's bring you in. Let's move from Class C to student housing. Public institutions are facing massive losses across the country. In fact, recently MSU announced it's freezing tuition for the fall. How does that impact your company's portfolio and ability to collect rent? John?
John's on mute.
John, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I'm
All
gonna
good.
learn how to unmute.
Welcome to
Anyway,
technology.
Thank you, Derek.
Yes.
You know, to answer your question, we're not exactly sure how it's going to impact us yet. You know, we've seen some universities come out and announce in the last several days that they are going to be reopening this fall. There's not been a major announcement yet from Michigan State. And so we're kind of in this eye of the storm, not much different than the market rate, that we're not exactly sure how it's going to play out. You know, from our perspective, we do own approximately 10,000 beds on campus, so we're certainly concerned about it. But at the same time, you know, I would expect that if Michigan State is looking to address their social distancing issue, you certainly have a much higher concentration of students per square foot in a dorm than you do in off campus. So we're just going to have to see, you know, how that plays out as it relates to students.
John, you source deals for a living. This is your job day in and day out. Have you been able to close deals lately through the pandemic? And how are you seeing this impact your pipeline and future deals?
You know, coincidentally, much like Cary mentioned, we had a deal scheduled to close on March 31st. And also coincidentally, it was the largest student property that we owned. It's over 500 units, 1,200 beds. We did ultimately close it on April 8th. But, you know, the week before the closing was the announcement and the shutdown. Then the loan that was being sourced by the buyer, us as the seller, was a CMBS loan, and they literally had their commitment canceled 10 days before the closing. But fortunately, working with, you know, with our broker, we had a very strong buyer, and they were able to work with a private banking group, and we got the deal closed on April 8th. So, I mean, it was a fairly sizable deal. They had all of the due diligence done, which was a real key at that point. So by the time we were down to the last week or so, the short strokes, the goal was just getting it closed and getting it funded. So that did happen. We do have another deal that was also scheduled to close in April that we've extended and we've pushed out. It's a student housing deal until later this summer. And we are still sourcing deals. So, you know, fortunately, as a family office, we source all of our equity internally. So we've got probably a little bit more flexibility. It's just going to depend on, I think, how the lenders react to all of this as it relates to reserves. And we also understand that a lot of the money right now that's available to be lent, they're looking at conserving for refinances and for existing clients. So again, much like the student housing, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. But this certainly hasn't deterred us from looking at good deals.
Very good. Let's bring in Saab. Saab, let's start with essential services. You have more than 2,000 full-time employees. You've managed 0 furloughs, 0 layoffs. In fact, you mentioned that you're actually hiring right now. What has been the biggest challenge for your company thus far in providing services to your residents with such a diversified portfolio that you and your family have?
So first of all, Derek, thanks for putting this together. It's a testament to how people need to change and adapt given the current conditions. And so you're ahead of the game, my friend. Also, thank you to the rest of the presenters here. Some great insight, definitely from Todd and Matt and John and Cary. So I think the group will appreciate that. Going to your question, Derek, you know, I think at the end of the day, for us, you know, we're a people business. I think a lot of people talk about it, but in the current environment, we really have to focus on protecting people. And so how that relates to our team is making sure that we're putting them in the right position to be safe. And so, who's essential at Singh, who's non-essential at Singh? How can you change the way they're working on a daily basis? Maybe you can shift some hours. Maybe you do a morning shift and an afternoon shift. As it relates to like our multifamily communities, the guys that are really front facing are your maintenance teams. And I think what we've done is kind of phase in what's a necessary maintenance task, what's an unnecessary maintenance task, and really kind of reserved like serious issues to emergency type situations. So like definitely having the proper PPE in place to make sure that they can take care of an emergency situation. What's an emergency situation in a multifamily community? Maybe no heat, right? Or a water heater goes bust, right? But if you're going into that type of unit, making sure they have the proper gear to take care of themselves and to make sure they're protecting the resident as well.
Saab, in terms of your portfolio, it's very diverse. Are you finding that one is sort of performing better than the other right now in terms of rent collections?
So I think we went into the month of April, like most, thinking that we would have quite a bit of a receivables balance. Fortunately, it definitely wasn't where we expected it. We were probably thinking it was going to be in the 10% range. Definitely less than 5% for us. I think the apartments have been strong for the last couple of years, the last few years, and we think that'll remain strong for the foreseeable future as long as we work and communicate with our residents. On the senior housing side of things, we're on the front lines there, right? And that's an at-risk demographic group. And we got on this preventative measures to kind of delay the entering of COVID into any of our communities pretty early on when you started seeing the action in Seattle. And so back in the last week of February, first week of March, we stopped all move-ins into our communities, and we stopped all third-party action into our senior housing communities. And it was really just to prevent COVID from spreading. And I think we did a good job of delaying it. Now, we do have a few cases in some of our communities. And with that, I think we're going to continue to have a delay in move-in. So, I think Todd was saying earlier that, we don't have tremendous amount of overbuilding in the Detroit market, but I think one asset that has a little bit more action than others is the senior housing space. And so there were already some occupancy struggles in senior housing to date. And now with the kind of a restriction on move-ins, we're going to have a little bit of more difficulties there going forward in the future.
Let's talk to Matt for a second about those difficulties moving forward. Matt, where does this leave the situation, the global pandemic? Where does this leave financing options and opportunities for those looking to expand the portfolio or perhaps to buy?
Every crisis creates opportunities. The likelihood is that this will be no different. If today is any indication, the financing is not going to be a problem at all. And as a matter of fact, I think the 10-year record close was at 50 basis points. This morning it was at 59. Spreads may have widened a little bit, but availability of lending dollars, there are people on this call who know it better than I do, participants, but that's encouraging. I think that it's a little early. I mean, there's always a deal out there to be looked at, and all of us who are deal makers and owners are always looking for a diamond in the rough. But it's unclear. It's really unclear to me. There are funds as we speak that are being created to acquire distressed assets, and it's just not clear. Obviously, the longer the problem persists, the longer and more damage that's done to our economy, the more hardship you're going to see, and you're going to see it among real estate owners. And so that's unfortunate in one sense, but it will potentially create opportunity. But we really don't know. Sitting here today, between the lending markets and current cap rates, there has not been much movement at all, in my opinion, and it remains to be seen. The only thing that I can tell you for sure is People who want to draw comparisons to the 2007, 8, 9 crises in the housing collapse and stuff like that, it won't be the same as that. That much I can promise you. Somehow it'll be different, and you'll have to be nimble, and you'll have to be, really on your game in order to discern what is an opportunity and what isn't.
Let's bring in a question here from Andrew Goulet. It's for Todd. Todd, have you seen projects that were planned to start in the latter part of 2020 delayed or just put on hold? Do you think our economy will rebound quickly from a public-private partnership? I think you're familiar with those. Todd?
Yeah, I was on mute. The short answer is yes. We've had a handful of projects, clients, both locally and nationally, have simply punted and said, put it on hold. We'll revisit it in 2021. We haven't had any that have been totally canceled. They've all been postponed for now. However, we do know the old saying that time kills all deals. So we're very cautious about that. As it relates to the overall economy, I think it comes down to really unemployment. I think, unemployment drives everything. Right now, Michigan's at plus or minus 25% unemployment. How quickly is that going to come back? Is that going to get to single digits in a matter of months? I don't know. But even if it does come down and gets down to 8, 9, 10%, that's still astronomical unemployment. And unemployment, percentage really drives the economy. I mean, if we're at double-digit unemployment in Michigan, it's going to have a huge impact on every part of our economy, the consumer and everybody else on this call. So I really think that's one of the driving things for our economy. And I believe it'll take years to recover from that. I 100% agree with Matt, which is unusual because usually we don't agree on things. Just kidding. Had to throw it out there. And that is, it will look very different than it did in 2008, 2009, primarily because the banks are very, very wealthy. They have very strong balance sheets, unlike they had in 8 and 9. This is not this crisis didn't come from the, finance world. It came from someplace else. So it will look very, very different. And I think it's really going to be, as we're a consumer economy, and because unemployment will be the driver from that, which I think will affect many, many other industries, us included. That's kind of where I see it. From the construction standpoint, I guess ask this question all the time: is construction pricing going to come down? There'll be peaks and valleys. Certain things will come down. If you look at history, even through the Great Recession, on a national basis, the cost of construction actually never really goes down. It goes through a period of time of being flat, and there might be dips in certain areas, whether it be raw materials. Right now, for example, lumber is down, oil is down, so that means asphalt is down. So there'll be certain things that within the global economy, commodities and others, that will affect construction. But typically, because construction is primarily labor, literally with people's hands, and never in history that I recall that the people are all of a sudden being paid less. All of a sudden they get a huge pay cut. So it's really the raw materials and other things that will affect construction pricing to impact it. And obviously how busy people are in productivity. And I think productivity will be the key thing that might bring construction pricing down, because there'll be less construction. So the higher skilled people will be able to work and be more productive, and the lower skilled ones will not be on the site, which will be reducing production.
John, let's go to you. What advice do you have for new investors looking to acquire properties right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you just need to be patient. I mentioned this earlier. I think we're right in the eye of the storm. I think we've got one wall behind us. We're sitting there and we're waiting to see how May is going to play out. And to Todd's comment, if we come out of this on the other side of the storm in mid-May and we get people back to work, then I think within 3, 4, or 5 months, other than maybe some blips on the lending side as it relates to some requirements, I think we're fine. I think a couple of things to remember are, as an investment, particularly in the commercial real estate class, multifamily is still the favorite. It still has the greatest potential for rent growth, for growing NOI long term, and it provides some real solid fundamentals, and that's why you've seen so much money flood into the space over the last 7, 8, 9 years, and it's going to continue to be that way. You know, and with respect to construction, we have 4 projects going in the ground this year, 1,200 units, a mid-rise in Novi, a mid-rise in Brighton, and then a suburban project up in Traverse City and a couple in Lansing. And this has not deterred us because we're looking at this. That's you know, those projects are going to take 2 to 3 years. By the time we get them in the ground, we get them stabilized, and we believe in those markets and in those product types that we're investing in. One of which is we're working with Sachse Construction on, and hopefully, you know, that will be in the ground, you know, by next spring at the latest, if not earlier. So, patience, I think, is the key, and you have to stick to the fundamentals and make sure, number one, it's a sound deal and it makes sense. And if it does, then smart people typically find a way to make a deal work.
Well, let's talk about making a deal work. I've got a question here from Thomas Bohr to Cary. What is your opinion of the lending climate? What will that look like in the present second quarter and then in the future for the third quarter?
I mean, overall, lending is still out there. A couple of the big things, the debt service requirements that are coming out for reserves. So they've got 12 months of debt service, principal and interest, taxes, and insurance. So that may affect somebody coming in on an acquisition, the equity that they need to bring into it. It's just a safety net, though, for kind of what's going on, what the agencies are putting in, and that can be released after a period of time. Coming into this crisis, the spreads blew out. Lending for a little bit of time felt like it came to a screeching halt. It seems like it's opening back up. I was just on a call the other day with Greystone, and it seems like the lending's starting to flow again. Interest rates are still in the low 3s, low to mid, maybe high, pushing up high 3s, depending on the deal. Biggest thing is keep in mind, agencies are underwriting actual collections. So all eyes are on May collections. That's the agencies are watching that real close. So lending's open, just a little bit tighter, and they're watching the key principles, and their wherewithal to do a deal are going to be some big factors moving forward for the agencies.
Saab, let's bring you in. What advice would you give to other owners besides to call you if they're looking to sell a property?
I'm selling a property. I don't know if that's up our alley.
No, well, but, if they're looking to sell, what advice would you give them right now, besides to call you?
Yeah, I think we all have to be a bit cautious in the near term here about what's happening and what we see happening probably in the next 90, 120 days. I think any type of project that we're looking at, from a construction start or a disposition or acquisition, you got to really see if your business plan or that product type really works. I think, if you look at our senior housing stuff, it's been defined around communal living, and similar to some of the mid-rise buildings that we're building right now. It's kind of catered to and centered around communal living. And given the current set of circumstances, is that what people are going to want? And so, based upon what the product is, where the product is, who it's catering to, there is going to be some up and downs right now. There's a bit of uncertainty in the market. So I'd be a bit cautious probably in the next 90 days on what you're going to do.
Very good. Matt, any closing thoughts?
I just follow up on what Todd said. There's going to be sellers. If for no other reason, even if it isn't distress, you're going to have seller fatigue, right? You're going to have some owners who, whether they didn't understand technology before, we talked about Zooming and things like that, it's a little bit of a new world order for them, even if we go back to a normal like we're all hoping. So you're going to see some opportunities, aside from telling the seller to call me, which I think any of us would say. Quite honestly, I don't think it's a bad time to be a seller, because there's been a dearth of product the past couple years. You heard Cary talk about the fact that the finance markets remain open, and they do. There's plenty of cash on the sidelines. If you can get past the hurdles of due diligence, and we can all be creative that way. I would encourage people who think it's time to sell, notwithstanding the fact that you maybe are sitting here saying you should have sold last year. Okay, fine. Hindsight's 20/20. It's not a terrible time to be a seller, and plenty of us are prepared to pay reasonable prices for real estate.
Todd, let's go
And
to
the
you.
last thing I would leave people with is fight it. Fight it out. You hold a lot of the answers to the problems and challenges that we face in your own hands. Take it day by day. We are a bit of a fraternity. That's part of what this call is about. We're all very, very busy, but there's a lot of people who are prepared to share ideas and assist one another in this industry. So fight it out, and we'll come through it together.
That's great advice. Todd, final thoughts?
My final thoughts are we are unique in this community. We work throughout U.S. and Canada, and there is no other real estate or construction community like what we have in southeastern Michigan. I think we should take advantage of that as much as possible because we are generally a struggling market, and the more we can do for each other and help out each other is always beneficial.
Thank you. John?
Be patient. I think on a macro basis, I think the government stepped up and infused a lot of money into the capital markets that allowed things not to freeze up like they did in 08 and 09. Like Todd and Matt said, the central banking system is strong as it's ever going to be. And as long as we get people back to work, I think we'll be fine. So I think it's be patient and stick to the fundamentals and run your business tight.
Cary, our closing thoughts.
Stay the course. I went through 2009 and didn't give up, and I'm here because of that. I would encourage anybody that's in the business. We will get through this. It'll be a little bit of time, hopefully a lot less than that cycle. Stay the course. Time is now to hunker down, not to take a vacation or relax. I mean, stay the course, and you guys will all come out of this better in the end.
We appreciate the insights and hope you found the conversation of value. Again, we're sensitive to all the lives that have been lost and impacted by COVID-19. And if you're in the position to, we encourage you to support the Children's Foundation COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund. Help us make a difference while making impact. You'll find the link on our landing page. Also, this program and all of our impact programs will be featured on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe today. You can catch our next episode, which will be featured focused on the mixed use and office sectors of commercial real estate. We had a great time today. We appreciate the insights from all of our guests. Want to remind you all to stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you soon on Impact.
You created it. You believe in it. A brand dedicated to excellence and destined for growth. It's a dream that propels you, that colors every step you take, that looms large and steers you towards success. Your vision sparks passion, exudes luxury. Now is the moment to draw them in, to become what they covet, to navigate to that next level, to rise above and reach beyond, to set a course that exceeds even your own expectations, to leave the competition in your wake. Now is your moment to be the brand everyone believes in.